So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ory, founder, CEO of XL Media, and one second. I have been given a very challenging task, and I want to give myself some excuses if it's terrible before I start. One of them, you just came back from lunch, you're all pretty sleepy, so I'm not going to be offended if anyone falls asleep. That's absolutely fine. I might throw something, but that's okay. Plus, I've been asked to talk about a lot of topics, a lot of different topics within online gambling, within both M&A, regulation, compliance, the future of the industry, affiliate operator relationships. So basically have material for about 7 hours. We'll try to squeeze it into a bit less than that. Because I'm very much into interactive, I'll be super happy if you just interrupt me at any point with questions because it'll make it a lot more interesting. So what are we going to do today? Okay. We're not going to read this. So our agenda for today, a quick overview of XL Media. I assume some of you know it in some level, some of you probably not at all. We're going to talk about the whole journey that we went through and kind of try with from basically a dirty, literally dirty basement with no windows to something a bit larger than that. Not just on the real estate side of things, but also in terms of funding, in terms of size, in terms of tech. We went through quite a few changes over the years. Diversification, why, how, and again, a bit about how we've done it. And I'm going to use the term how we've done it quite often because in some sense, I do feel like a dinosaur and I do feel like we've done pretty much everything, but that's absolutely not true because there's so much more coming. There's so many things happening in the industry, so it's an interesting time to see where we go from here as well. We're going to talk about regulation, although I've been out-thundered by a panel of lawyers before, so I hope I can add something interesting and probably in wrong legal terms, but I'm going to try anyway. M&A from the buyer side. I was sitting on the sidelines when there was an esteemed panel of colleagues of mine that had a lot to say about M&A. So again, I hope I can add anything interesting, but I definitely think we and myself, we have a bit of a different approach to how we do M&A. So we'll have maybe some new things to add. We're going to talk a bit about the food chain, which I'll explain what I mean by that. The food chain in terms of operators, affiliates, suppliers of various kinds, larger affiliates, smaller affiliates, how everyone works together. And of course, within a mature environment. And we all know, we keep talking about regulation, we keep talking about other products. Look, we've all been doing this for some time. I've personally been doing this for 15 years, which I think in internet years is literally since the Stone Age. So sometimes I do feel like that. So obviously this is a mature environment. And I really would like to re-emphasize that the Q&A part is what I'm personally interested in because I've given this presentation variations of this 100 times. So the Q&A part will be the more interesting one. So a little bit about XL Media. We are a self-proclaimed leading performance marketing company. We've been listed, active since 2003, which now is 15 years. We've been listed in the London A market since 2014. What we do, it's quite obvious, but in any case I'll explain. We attract paying users from different online and mobile channels, and we direct them to online businesses. If you would have seen this presentation 4 or 5 years ago, this would say online gambling operators. Because we do originate from the online gambling industry, we are still today one of the largest gambling affiliates. But we have a significant part of our business outside of gambling, predominantly in sectors like mobile apps, mobile games, personal finance. And by personal finance, I mean things like credit cards, bank deposits, loans, mortgages, predominantly in North America. Very consistent track record of profitability and growth. This business has effectively been growing since the basement quite consistently, especially in the last few years since we listed, with a combination of organic growth, which has always been our focus, as well as some acquisitive growth as we progressed. One of our stated strategies in 2014, and actually when we listed and quite before that, was to diversify the business and to build on the same skill set that we believed we had. Our thesis was, and I think a lot of other companies out there are kind of trying to apply the same thesis, that if we manage to succeed and develop technology and know-how that works in such a complicated and difficult and obviously competitive industry, because obviously I see a lot of very talented people here that make our lives a lot harder, then we can definitely replicate this to other sectors that may represent an opportunity, and I'll be happy to talk a bit about our experiences in other sectors. As you can see, we do work anything from personal finance to cybersecurity and apps and so on. We're active in a variety of different sectors. We talked about that. And this is our business model and some of our clients. I'll go over this briefly. We attract paying users, as I said. We use 3 different methodologies to achieve this goal. We call it publishing, media, and the partners network. That's for investors. For us, we all know what that means. Publishing is mainly the search engine optimization, information on websites about various topics. We own a very large amount of these websites that we develop and optimize. We also have acquired quite a few, which I know is a very popular topic these days. On the media side of things, we run thousands of simultaneous self-funded campaigns across different platforms. Keyword there being self-funded. We're not an agency in any way. You don't come up to us if you're a brand or if you're an apps publisher or if you're a credit card issuer. You don't come up to us and offer us a cost plus 5 or a cost plus 10. No, you ideally convince us you have a good product and you'll pay us enough to make it interesting for us, and we will promote you at our own coin. The way we do that is by acquiring large amounts of media on any possible platform, anything from paid search, which we count as media, social advertising, mobile advertising, in-app, video, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you name it. We buy everywhere we can. We obviously buy on non-performance models, anything from cost per mil, cost per view, cost per click. And on the back of that, we sell performance, revenue sharing, CPA. CPI, which I've always stated I'm not a huge fan of, but unfortunately the app industry seems to still like to work in that model, but that's also a work in progress. Partners Network, we do have an historical asset that is part of the group. We've done it for 15 years and we still do it, and we probably have a few partners here in the room that work with us, and I hope they're happy, and if not, I hope they'll not complain too vocally, but I think they should be pretty happy. All 3 divisions drive the users to the clients on the right-hand side. As you can see, a variety of different clients in different sectors. Currently about 300 gambling operators and about 500 non-gambling clients, operators, anything from the VPN guys to the personal finance guys to the mobile games. In the US, in Canada, in Europe, in Asia, quite a large variety. Performance models, as we mentioned, again, we all know this, but it's good to repeat. Lifetime revenue sharing, the most common model. Cost per acquisition, second most common model. And cost per installation, all kinds of various hybrids models. So, start from the top, or actually from the bottom, the basement. A little bit about our journey, and actually I have to admit, both of these are not our office. I actually did this a bit too late, so I actually had to take to Google Image, to look in Google Images. But I did add that this is a basement on the left one, just for. So, how should I say? It was quite a journey for us because we started in a place that we were kind of just doing what we could and what we knew, and we did it in a very, and I say we because of myself and the other founders. Today the group is a lot more people than that. But we were sitting in a basement, we were doing each one of us had their own skill set, and we did something and it worked. And we always thought, okay, where do we take this from here? Do we keep doing this? Do we evaluate other opportunities, other methods, other products, other regions? Where do we want to go with this? And it raised a lot of questions for us. Questions like, again, are we just going to do this in gambling? Are we just going to do it in the regions that we know? And although I am Israeli and I do not live in Scandinavia, we somehow ended up choosing Scandinavia as the first market, and it's been our largest one for quite some time. Not anymore, but definitely used to be our largest one for quite some time. Do we grow at all costs? Do we buy more media? Do we build more sites? Or do we focus on optimizing the existing ones? Do we reach a certain amount of revenue, certain profit margin, and we just calm down there? All kinds of questions. What platforms do we use? Do we just, back in the day, you literally people would actually build sites on front page. You know, it doesn't really exist anymore. And back in the day, it's not that long ago, it's 10, 12 years ago. Do we use Drupal, Joomla, WordPress, all kinds of things like that, all kinds of questions that came up. What kind of culture do we want to have? It's kind of funny to talk about culture when you have 2 people sitting in the basement. You know, the culture is basically trying not to kill each other. But when you grow to a little bigger than that, you have to start thinking things like corporate culture and, you know, catering to people's needs and caring about other people, which is, for me, it was okay. Some of my partners struggled with that, but for me, it was pretty okay. Then you have all kinds of questions like financing. Do you want to bring in investors? Do you want to sell a chunk of your business? We'll come back to this later on in the M&A side of things. When is the right time to do it? What kind of investors do you want to bring? Do you want to bring in some debt? Do you want to bring in some friends and family money? Do you want to find some private equity? And the reason I raise all these questions now, because I'll give you my answers to them later on based on what we've done, which may or may not have been the best choice, but for us it worked pretty well. So, you know, I'm happy to share our journey. We chose, for example, on this question, we chose to go with the private equity, but we didn't actually raise money from them. We were a profitable business. We were lucky to be a profitable business, so we sold the majority share of our business in 2012 to a private equity group, and then we raised money from another one 2013, which also led to us listing a bit later on. Where do you want to end up? Do you want to end up just running a business that pays your bills? Do you want to end up with a business that will buy you that yacht you wanted in the Caribbean? I personally have no aspirations for yachts, but maybe others do. Do you want to end up ringing the NASDAQ bell, or putting the plaque in the LSE? Do you want to have a trade sale, appear in the newspapers? All kinds of questions that you ask. Well, the newspaper question we didn't ask, so that just happened. But you also start thinking of all kinds of things like lawyers, accountants, advisors, IR, all kinds of organizational psychologists, head of HR. No offense to anyone that does HR, but when you're 3 people, you don't think you need a head of HR. When you're 10, you start to feel that you really need a head of HR, and things like that. My theory on that, or not theory, my thought on that is, yes, all these function costs, but it's not all bad. And this is something that I'm sure any affiliate or any even operator that is quite small in terms of the amount of people now would feel this pain. You're 5, you're 6, you're 10 people, and all of a sudden you find yourself messing around with all kinds of things like payday, like sick days, salaries, social insurance. Can I bring the dog to the office? Can I bring somebody to pick up my kid? All kinds of stuff like that. But my point is, from our perspective, to grow with this and to accept early on that there will be service givers, there will be advisors that may cost you a bit more money than you don't like to add things to your cost base. It's something you really need. CXXXXXO, that is my theory on anything from, of course, I would imagine most founders would want to end up a CEO, I would hope. But then you start thinking, okay, maybe I need a CTO to do all my development. Then the first thing you need to think, and all the accountants in the room will be super happy, the first thing you need to think before you even thought about it, that you need a CFO. That is definitely I was taught this lesson forcefully when we were 60 people, and private equity guys came in and saw, wait, you have one bookkeeper for all this mess? And it took them about 8 months to just figure out how to start the DD on investing in us and buying us. So that's something you should figure out very early on that is very important to have. Platform, that's something I can't emphasize enough, and we as a company have always taken a very tech-first approach, and I'll give another disclaimer, I really hate using buzzwords, and I'm going to avoid using all kinds of things like synergies and multi-brand platform or omni-channel, even though the omni-channel one actually works, but all these kind of things. But we really felt early on that if this thing is ever going to scale up from 5, 10, 15 sites, casino in Scandinavia, maybe even to sports, maybe even to other languages. Today we work in 20 languages and about 150 tier 1 moneymaker sites, about 3,000 smaller ones. So it could not be run in any way, in any kind of manual process. And we figured this on pretty early on, and it's something I'm happy to answer questions about later on, how to make this decision, what do you need to think when you build your platform and you plan it, but definitely build for scale. You don't need to do it in day 1, but definitely start thinking about it not after 2-3 years when you find out that you keep hiring people just to kind of put their finger that the leak doesn't turn into a flood. We don't want that. You want to figure out early on how you can automate as many different tasks, especially the mundane ones. This is a lesson we've learned very well. I'm not being very specific because I'm kind of hoping the questions later would lead me to be specific, but just have this kind of thought and process. And I mentioned before culture. Culture is a very tricky one, and it really depends where you are, what kind of people you're hiring, where you see them going forward. Another question that comes up, are you in the longer run, this really relates more to medium-sized operation, are you going to promote from within? Are you going to bring all kinds of high-paid, big CV people from outside? This is definitely a question to think about for the mid-size trying to go to be larger affiliates or larger operators. This is something we faced quite a lot, and I think the place that I felt it the most was around 50, 60, 70 employees. Up to there, it was kind of fast track, and then clean up the mess. Then we did the clean up the mess. It took us about literally 1.5 to 2 years to do that. And then we said, okay, now we want to grow this thing, not just in people, obviously. We want to grow this also in performance. And how do we do that? So this is definitely questions to think of. I'm sorry I talk really fast, but I really do have a lot of things to cover. And please stop me if you should. Not a buzzword. I said I'm not going to use buzzwords. So diversification is not a buzzword. we use the term performance marketing. A lot of people use it very loosely, but why do we use the term performance marketing and not gambling affiliation? Because it's exactly what it is. It is performance marketing. What are we doing? We're doing marketing and getting paid when we perform. It's quite simple. And I think everyone in this room would agree, I hope would agree with me, that what we do is not generic to gambling. We might know a little more about casino or poker, or sports or bingo or any one of these other topics, but the skill set that each one of us, and of course this relates to the affiliates, also to the operators in some sense, because any kind of gambling operations relate in many ways to any kind of e-commerce site or any kind of service provider that sells their service online. What we do, do user acquisition. We send paying users. We can send it to anywhere. Of course, each one of the methods we use applies to a different industry. I would say, for example, publishing or search engine optimization is definitely relevant for any industry that users like to educate themselves before they make the decision what to buy. Media, maybe a little different. It applies to those users as well, but it also applies to industries like mobile games. Mobile games, nobody looks for. Nobody goes and searches, what are the best Viking-themed games for Android? No, they see some annoying video ad on Facebook and they go play whatever game that they saw. So you have to think, do we want to leave some money on the table by not doing A or B or C? So the point I'm trying to make, definitely the thesis that we started thinking of very seriously 5 years ago, and we spent the last 5 years proving it, in my opinion, is that gambling is a great starting point, and the skill set and technology, if you build it with a generic thought process, it could definitely end up in you working in many industries and create different revenue streams, which of course improves your quality of earnings as a company. We're not just any casino players and poker players or bettors or bingo players. How are we doing it? Are we just doing SEO, as I mentioned? Are we just doing media? Are we just doing the partners network? Do we do it for certain languages? Do we just focus on buying paid search, PPC? Do we also do Facebook? What kind of Facebook do we do? Do we do fan pages? Do we talk to the brands to get their approval to run? I could go on and on, but the point is we have to always think where we want to take this, and not, in my opinion, one of my biggest tips is not to be stuck on something that works. It's very easy to be stuck on something that works. I've committed this semi-mortal sin from 2005 to 2007. This business was making tremendous amount of money with tremendously little amount of effort. And that was, I think, if we would have stayed in that comfort zone, we would never be anywhere close to where we are today, and we would definitely decrease from where we were then, because that was unsustainable. So the thought process should always be, I'm doing well now, how do I capitalize on this to do even more in a year or two? That is my thought process. I go back to the platform. You really want a stronger generic platform. And what do I mean by that? Try not to hard code too many things that can't be changed easily. I'm a terrible programmer, so the programmers in the room will excuse me if I say things that are absolutely wrong, but you definitely don't want to write in codes that are cryptic, in programming languages that nobody can come in and fix, because who knows, maybe the super talented programmer you have now will probably be gone to another super interesting product next week, and you have to bring in somebody to look at all the mess that he or she has created. You don't want that. WordPress, Joomla, whatever you choose something that you know for a fact can be catered to by somebody else in the future. Very big tip for us. Scalable IT in the sense of servers and things like that, think of it early on. Because it doesn't cost a lot in the beginning, so you don't think it's important, but when you really start getting a lot of traffic or buying a lot of media or doing a lot of tracking for app advertising, if you didn't fix these costs in advance, it's gonna suck. It's gonna suck big time and be very expensive. Then, like me, my CFO is very short and small, but she packs a big punch and she kicks me every time I make a mistake like that, so don't let that happen to you. Which products do we promote? What are the low-hanging fruits? You know, if you're promoting online casino, then you think, should I go to sports? Should I go maybe to bingo? Should I go to poker? How do I apply my current skill set? These are things, I'm not going to give you the answers. Everyone has their own answers. What I'm going to give you is the questions you should ask yourself at any given time. And you see the repeating message here is really don't let the comfort zone get you. Because that's something that you should always be thinking, I'm doing something well. Is this something generic? Can it be used for something else? Languages, not a barrier at all. So many translation services. Of course, you can trust some of them, you can't trust the others. Plus hiring, it's a global village these days. So easy to find people everywhere, especially, most of you are in Malta or in the UK or anywhere else. It's easy to find multilingual people. Also, it's not written there, but it's definitely worth mentioning. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to have native language speakers working for you. Even if you have the best translation firm, because you have no idea what you're getting, and even the most expensive, I don't know, $50 per page translation cannot be targeted towards conversion. We all know that. We all know that even the best written text, if it's not targeted, it's not going to work. And this becomes a very costly mistake when you keep growing and you find yourself with a 15, 20, 25K monthly translation bill for your amazing network of sites that doesn't drive any users. And then you start thinking why. These are questions that have to be thought, that you have to think about. My favorites. Regulation. So unfortunately, I didn't see the lawyers talk before, so anything that they've answered before, I apologize if you have to hear again, but I'm going to give my take as somebody that has racked up an insane amount of billable hours in the last 5 years in a variety of countries, give you my take on what I see as the current regulatory state and how we can use it, why it is not. Of course, it makes our life a little more challenging, but a little more interesting. And why do I see regulatory changes, especially now we're in Denmark, right next door in Norway, just some big things are brewing. But we all knew this was coming. Nobody here is surprised that things are changing, and this grayish, either light gray, dark gray situation we've been enjoying for the last 10 years, we all knew it's not going to last. And we all knew that we have to grow up, so let's accept it and try to find a way to do it and work within the environments. Full disclosure, I did ask my general counsel to review this, so I don't make any costly legal mistake. Tip, don't write anything that you can't commit to or has been checked by somebody that knows what they're talking about. Commercial impacts of regulation. Operators have become much more responsible for what we do. And they correctfully, in my eyes, and I know this is an unpopular statement, they look to minimize the risk. We've seen so many cases of operators getting slapped with all kinds of fines because of stuff they had no control. We've seen disgusting things like that ad with the cancer in the UK. I thought that was literally one of the most gross advertising tactics I've ever seen, and we as an industry don't want anything to do with things like that. And it's a shame that I don't know exactly what happened, it's a shame that whoever did that didn't get fined, but actually the operator that was working with them. I don't know enough details, but I just feel it's something we don't want to have in any way. These steps have had serious commercial impacts on affiliates. They're terminating contracts, they're changing terms constantly, they're being much more firm with what we can and cannot do. We've seen Skybet close down their affiliate program. Not going to answer questions about that. Not happy about it, but not going to answer questions about that in any way. 888 got slapped with a fine, obviously rolled to affiliates, Ladbrokes, Paddy, the list goes on and on. Nobody has been immune to changes in regulation. This is something that has an impact on our day-to-day lives. What is the tip? Very simple one, but very hard to actually do. Work within the rules and policies to remain in the game. We have to listen, we have to have a dialogue, we have to have we have to be a receptive ear to what they want. Yes, we might think at points that they are demanding too much from us by the fact that they harass us with things like, no, on the disclaimer on that free bets bonus on the bottom, you have to change word number 27 from this to that on all your sites by 2 hours from now. Yes, it happened to us when was the Grand National? Last week? Saturday morning? So you get an email from your beloved affiliate manager to our relationship manager. You have 2 hours to change this. Now this set of words was literally on 47 different pages and I don't know, about 50 different media campaigns on Facebook, video, YouTube, Google AdWords. Luckily for us, and this, I'm going to come back to the scale and tech part, it took us half an hour to fix this. Not because we are very quick with our keyboards, because we've developed the tech platform already to cater to compliance needs, our tech publishing platforms and our media platforms. Had we not had that, we would probably got into a lot of trouble with this operator because the whole Grand National, which was it 1-2 days, I'm not a big horse racing fan, but I know it's not a very long event, we would be fixing this when the event was already done and the damage was caused. That can't happen. And we need to understand that because that is true for any industry, not just gambling. We, for example, are very active in the credit cards, bank deposits, and so on in the US industry. You can imagine when a credit card company wants to change something, it needs to be changed immediately. You don't want to piss off Visa, MasterCard, and Amex because that's generally a bad move. I feel, and this was the bad part, regulation, not bad, but let's say complicated. Now comes the good part. I see regulation as a great opportunity for us being the performance marketing companies that accept that there's so much more we can do in a regulated environment. And I'll be very specific about it. We all talk about Sweden. Sweden is a country that, let's be honest, we've all enjoyed the last ride that, is legal, illegal, you can advertise on TV kinda, but you can't do Facebook, you can't do AdWords, you can't do all these kind of things. And let's be even more honest. One of the reasons all our publishing sites, our SEO sites of all of us here in the room work so well because that is one of the main ways people have to find gambling because they can't be approached with media ads. We all know it. Nobody wants to say it, but I'm going to have to say it because it's the truth. You can see that they saw the TV ad, some of them went direct, but the rest of them had to find it via Google search or whatever it is that they searched. What will happen on January 1st, hopefully? We definitely know it's going to be 18% tax. Okay, that's not so good. We definitely know that there'll be a little more compliance. That's, okay, not so bad. But we also know that most likely Google will open up for AdWords. Facebook will open up for advertising. YouTube will open up. Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. I have a revelation. We have actually sent some FTDs from Snapchat. It is not just millennials sending naked pictures of themselves. It actually works for gambling as well.
Not messing up Snapchat.
Sorry. We haven't done so on Tinder yet. No, it actually works. So this is something that will definitely happen. Now, are we going to seize this opportunity? Absolutely. Our plan, because we're similar to some companies in the industry, but we're very dissimilar from the others. We have a very significant part of our business today, about 50% of our revenue coming from the media channel. Most of it is not AdWords in the UK. Some of it is AdWords in the UK, but most of it is not. It's anything from those Facebook ads, the video ads we've developed. We are a Facebook marketing partner. We're an Instagram marketing partner. We're a preferred partner with Twitter. I'm not trying to wow you with my trophies. I'm just saying that we've spent the last 10 years working in other industries, not just because we want to make money in other industries, of course we do, but because we want to be prepared technologically and know-how-wise to when gambling will regulate so we can deploy all this knowledge and all this experience and all this technology on advertising gambling on all these methods. This is something, it was a strategic decision we made 7, 8 years ago that we will invest in media, even at lower margins. Our media campaigns in other industries are much lower margins than gambling. I'll be the first to admit it. But it gives us, I think, a significant advantage when the country will regulate. Higher quality earnings matters less to some, more to others. To us, it very much matters because we've got a bunch of angry English pension funds that we have to please all the time. They're not so angry, they're actually kind of happy with us, but generally they have a chip on their shoulder, but you know. So higher quality earnings, what does that mean? It means that every dollar or Swedish kroner we make in Sweden from a fully regulated Swedish environment is worth more to us as companies than any dollar we make in a gray market. Same goes for the Danish market, same goes for the UK market, same goes for all the other regulated markets like Italy, like France, like Spain, and so on. We prefer to make money in those industries. I can tell you, anyone with aspirations to be a public company one day or to work with private equity, I can tell you from my experience, investors love anything that doesn't have regulatory risk. Of course, I'm stating the obvious, but when you tell them I'm making money in personal finance in the US, they're much happier with that and they value that much higher than I'm making money with gambling in Sweden at this point. 1st of January, it's going to be a little different. Something to think about will be contracts with clients and suppliers. By the way, Michael, can you tell me when I'm out of time?
15 more minutes.
Good. Contracts with suppliers. This is a topic that I think that's been quite popular. There's been changes to contract, retroactive cancellations. There's been all kinds of terrible things. I'm sorry to say, but those of you that don't have a general counsel should consider getting one, especially the mid-sized ones, larger ones, and those that are smaller than that, get a law firm. Get a deal with them to not charge you too much and start getting contracts with your affiliate partners. Apologies, operators, but the terms and conditions on the site in the long run in regulated environments will be difficult for us. We're going to need IOs with details. We're going to need contracts. I'm sure those of you in the room that deal with us probably find our relationship team being a little more specific about this lately, but unfortunately, you have compliance and we have, yes? Well, of course, there was an initial pushback that said, no, the terms and conditions on the site are fine, but we pushed back. We negotiated, and we talked, and we gave commitments that we would be a receptive ear when there's issues. The Grand National example was very good with this. We take responsibilities as well. We don't want all the responsibility to go to the operators. We know that we're accountable for your message. We're absolutely aware of that, but there should be some reciprocity in that. It's a give and take, exactly. Revisit or enter a new contract with third parties in view of GDPR. GDPR, that's a big one. I don't know how many of you are in the front line for GDPR. We personally, Excel, not so much. Mainly we track some IPs on some of our websites. We do retargeting and things like that. A micro promilla of our business is email, not even that, so obviously double opt-in. Consult a GDPR expert to review your activities. I have no idea what most of you do. Some of you I do know. But tip, you don't want to get the GDPR fine. It's going to cost you a fortune. Tech, I think I mentioned that before, but I'm emphasizing it for the third time. Grand National, great example. You need to be able to deploy changes quickly. You need to promotional offers, messages, and if you're doing videos or social network, even the tweets, your site manager's tweets, if they're wrong, operators can get into big trouble for that. If the message is misleading or whatever, think about this. Have control over all your distribution channels, SEO sites, social networks. Just try to think of that. Oh, M&A. The reason I laugh because I had the privilege of being on the sideline with effectively all my competitors were on stage talking about M&A, and I was very happy not to be on stage because I think they probably have a lot more to say than me. But I think about we are obviously in a very interesting time with M&A. I will take a leap and say that we as Excel were probably the first one. We're probably probably the one that started the trend because we just listed a few years before everyone and we got this big injection of cash and we started buying. We're definitely not the most aggressive of the bunch, and we're definitely not. It's part of our strategy, but it's not the only part of our strategy. So I think we're a bit different than some of the others. What are the assets that we like? We like publishing SEO assets that help our vertical and geographical expansion, yes. We like solid and stable earnings, which are spread well, both geographies and clients and sub-verticals, ideally more rev share. Just as a side comment, I think, and this is not necessarily just relates to gambling, I think and hope our industry as a whole will, in the longer run, go only towards rev share. What I tell my investors constantly is that I, in a 10-year outlook, see XL Media hopefully as a 100% rev share business. Will that happen? Probably not, because I also tell them we want to work in personal finance, and I think it'll be a cold day in hell when American Express will pay me rev share. As much as I would love for that to happen, I don't see that happening. But nevertheless, in some industries where it's allowed, I would like that to be the case. We like look, whoever was in the M&A panel has heard this, but I'm repeating. We like companies that are organized financially. Don't show me the great last 2 months you had and expect me to be a sucker to buy you on a 77 multiplier in your last quarter. Not going to happen. And I see some nodding from my colleagues. I think they're also on the same boat on that one. Easy to migrate platform. Again, I mentioned that before. If I can give a tip, try to avoid coding your own special system that only your special guy from that special country you found on Rent-A-Coder can handle. We don't want to mess around with that. We want things that are easy to migrate to our platform. This is also something that is from my understanding, is quite unique to Excel. We take a very centralized approach to what we do. We do not have a variety of offices around the world. We have 2 offices, one is a headquarters and one where we have 400 people in Israel and 225 in Cyprus. The Cyprus part is mainly a headquarters. And when we buy assets, assets being these websites, 1, 2, or a network, we migrate them both platform-wise to our publishing platform, which is one that runs the whole network. And we usually, most of the cases, it will be our people that run them. So that's also something easy to migrate. We don't like assets that are built to sell. I mentioned one kind of these assets that have been around for a year and had a fantastic Q4. It needs to be a little bit more than that. How does the process work? Approach, either via bank or not. I'm not opening that. You guys argued about that 15 minutes before, so I'm not doing that again. We would approach, we would have a dialogue and high-level discussion. I think our process, and I think that's similar to others, we all have the same M&A process. We have a discussion, we agree on terms, LOI. LOI would be a no-shop for the seller and non-binding for the buyer. Why non-binding for the buyer? Because we don't know what we're going to find in the DD, and if it's a big enough deal, we don't want to be forced to put out a public statement on a deal that we don't know is going to happen. So it's going to have to be non-binding. DD between 45 to 60 days. I'm sure some people are going to go like, yeah, we want 30 days. No, we need time. Don't stress us. We're here to buy, and if we're spending time on lawyers and accountants to review your site, we want to buy it. Okay, so give us the time we need. We're signed the contract, the closing, the migration period. If you noticed, I didn't really mention earnout because that was also a discussion that was pretty popular in the M&A panel. And I'll be happy to answer questions if somebody's interested later. We're not big earnout fans for search engine, for websites. Why? Because with no offense to anyone, one of the reasons we're buying these things is we think we can run it more efficiently. And it doesn't serve my interest to have a seller run it on my behalf for a year or two. I don't get the buzzword alert. I don't get the cost synergies I'm looking for, and I don't get the revenue synergies by applying my deals and having my sales team do their magic and overcharging the operators for it. No, just kidding. And overcharging the operators, but we usually would expect the seller to migrate the assets and help running them during the transition phase. We're not looking really for an earnout, as I said. It's important to mention. General tips, let's do this quickly. Get comfortable with the idea of selling and letting your baby go. So many times we get sellers that seem super excited about selling their business, and midway through we figure out, okay, these guys are not ready yet. They need a couple more years. Make your peace, get your peace, achieve your peace, and then start the process. Think exactly what you want to sell. If there's something you want to leave behind, that's also fine, but just try to be as straightforward with it as possible. We've seen deals that assets were taken in and out of a deal during a process. It just makes everyone's life harder. Prepare financials, we talked about that. I put this before I knew you guys are going to argue for 20 minutes about that. Sell-side banker, yes, no, maybe, up to you. I personally, as a buyer, it doesn't really help me that you have a sell-side buyer. It mainly helps you as a seller, but think if you want to do it anyway. That's your choice. Deal only with potential buyers you feel are really willing to make this deal happen. Check their financials. If they don't have the money on the balance sheet, in most cases you can check that, do you want to take their shares or not? Have somebody, if you don't know how to evaluate their shares, get some expert to evaluate how their shares are doing. Are their shares too expensive? Are they cheap? Maybe it's better for you to take shares because they're completely undervalued. Never the case with Excel. Always valued correctly. No, it's undervalued. Try to be as straightforward as possible. Buyers hate surprises after investing. Obvious. And we don't want to end up suing anyone for misrepresenting. We'll do it if we have to. This is not a threat, but if somebody's grossly misrepresented what they're selling and this has happened, we will get into legal conflict, and just nobody wants that. Remember that the process should work for both. Biggest cliche I can think of, but it's absolutely true. You can kill us with the price and we'll maybe be in a bad enough emotional state to pay you what you want, but it doesn't serve your interest for us to be an unhappy buyer because, we might cross paths in the future as well, and our engagement doesn't necessarily end on the day you get your money. The bragging page, yes, we've done a lot of deals. Quite a few of them. Let's see, I don't remember what I have in here. Okay, we're almost there. The modern food chain, just so many players going on, and again, I apologize, I had too many topics to cover, and please stop me if there's questions, so we could do this some other time, but so many players these days, it's becoming a lot more complicated. We have software suppliers, aggregators, platform suppliers, operators, white labels owned by affiliates, white labels owned by operators, normal affiliates, very large affiliate networks. I called it social mobility, it's probably business mobility, probably the wrong phrase, but it's not just about scale, it's to add real value. It's been mentioned a lot about, are we still doing these sites, these top lists with the backlinks that we're buying, or are we actually adding real value? Kudos to I know there's about 27 of them in the room here, so the guys from Better Collective, you guys, your sports stuff kicks ass, really, appreciate it. And so that's real value, that's adding real value to sports bettors, that's what we want to see in the longer run. Unique tools, unique content, different languages. It's just not good enough. The top list with the backlinks that you buy on whatever networks, it's not going to last. And of course, we've all done it. We've been doing this for 15 years. Obviously, if you look at our sites from 2006, they were not that amazing. Okay, I would be the first to admit that. But they're slowly getting better. Scale does matter, of course. And this relates to operator M&A. I believe that the larger the operator, the less they want to deal with small affiliates. Sorry, it sucks for the small ones, but it seems to be the truth. They prefer to deal with the affiliates that send them a lot of players. Now, is this a problem? Maybe. But if you just try to scale up and try to understand that if you're a small partner, try to have less demands, in my opinion. This is my tip to my fellow affiliates and how to deal with your operator clients. Wait until you actually carry some weight before you come with a lot of big demands. A lot of smaller affiliates are usually the most vocal ones and the ones that demand the most. I wrote omni-channel again. I actually didn't mention it, but I think omni-channel on the affiliate side, meaning you can drive players from SEO, from media, from partners, whatever it is, different kinds of media, different kind of SEO, super important, especially in regulated environments. Transparency helps, and here's the part I'm sure a lot of operators will be very happy I mentioned that, because operators need to know what we're doing. We can't mask our links, we can't run spam emails, we can't do all the kind of shady practices we've seen in the industry. No. We don't want them to get fines for us, because then we're screwed and they're not going to pay us anymore, so let's just not do that. Be open with them, even if you don't like it. If you don't want to be open with them, don't work with them. It's no other way to do it. Yeah, I think I pretty much covered all this. But again, transparency, GDPR, legitimate sources. Let's not black hat the shit out of each other, and let's not do spam, and let's not do SMS spam, and let's not all do those things that people do. There's probably a lot more things I didn't mention. We firmly believe in long-term revenue sharing alliances with between affiliates and partners. Contracts are a must. I'm just trying to summarize. We've said all this. Real B2B relationships, I have some recollection of champagne and boats in Amsterdam, so it's not just about that. It's about the normal dialogue between the relationship managers on both sides, between the lawyers on the contracts, and between the finance people on payments. It has to be a real professional B2B relationship. It's not just about the partying anymore as much as I would like it to be. Have a dedicated relationship manager. I think a lot of affiliates still don't do this. They do everything themselves. Of course, it's hard because you have another person on your payroll, but it helps to have a receptive ear for the operators when they want to talk to you, and that doesn't necessarily have to be you, for the founder of the business. It could be somebody on your behalf that manages all these clients. Ideally, the bigger you grow, it'll be more than one. Pay attention to all the details, the Grand National example I gave before. Coordinate with your clients your plans. Are you going to expand into a certain country? Are you going to start a new method? Do they want you to do that? Don't assume for a fact that if you found some miracle source on Twitter, maybe your operator client doesn't want you to be on that source because their compliance doesn't like it. You have to have a dialogue. You have to try to understand what they're willing to accept, what they're not, what they prefer, which countries they want. There's so many things to discuss. So again, I emphasize the relationship manager. I think it's super important. For later, this is some of our technologies just to give kind of impression what it is that we've developing, and we've spent quite a lot of time and money on this, from tracking solutions for mobile to what I believe are quite strong business intelligence tools, to our publishing platform Palcon, to our social segmentation tool that is a Facebook and Instagram partner. So of course not everyone will have the resource to develop these things, but try to think, even within the limited scope that you're active in, what are the best practice systems that I need? Think, do you want to develop them? Do you want to outsource them? Do you want to use off the shelf? I can tell you also from our experience, we've spent countless man hours and we have 100 developers developing these things, but still we benchmark it towards off the shelf systems. For example, 2 weeks ago, we had a test of our of Rampix versus social.com by Salesforce, and yes, we beat social.com, but if the result could have been different, and if it would have been different, I would be very angry at my developers and I would upgrade and use social.com at that point. So benchmarking towards best practice in the industry is also important. Thank you. Any questions? I saw a question, yeah.
Hello. My name is Rob. I'm from Broadway Gaming. You guys recently acquired Which Bingo.
Yes.
A couple of things. One, what inspired the purchase? And number two, what does the future hold for Which Bingo as an individual entity, if there is a future as an individual entity?
Well, what drove the business, the acquisition, was the fact that it's a fantastic asset. And it's been around since 2002, 1. It is absolutely none of those built-to-sell kind of businesses. The founder and the team running it have done a fantastic job of developing what I believe is one of the best resources in a very solid industry, in a regulated environment. It was a no-brainer from us that we want to do it. Regarding what we're going to do with it, I apologize, this is not the forum that I can share that. I'll be happy to talk about it. But we intend to keep running it and having it and continue to running the best bingo site in the UK. I can't do more than that now. Any more questions?
More questions for you. Or do you ever attempt to own the customer? I mean, you're buying a lot of traffic, you're seeing a lot of people. You're often sending the same person, I'm sure, to the same places twice, where you're not getting any kind of performance credit for that. And also, since you're going into multiple verticals, wouldn't you be better off to own that customer, communicate directly with the customer, and then using your own business analytics and software, decide at what time of the day the customer is going to do what, and then direct them to places to do it?
You're absolutely right. It would be a fantastic move to do that, but we're not, because it introduces a whole new layer to the business on a very high-level professional level, and it would require us to have all kinds of GDPR issues. It would require us to have all kinds of consent issues, and it would taint our relationship with our partners, I believe. Because I think one of the reasons operators like to work with us and with other affiliates is the fact that they know we're not moving around users from place to place. If I knew the customer, they're suspecting that when the customer is not the most active with them, I'm going to take 2,000. There's been cases in our industry, in sub-sectors in industry, where this was common practice to move around players from place to place on CPA or on RevShare, it doesn't matter, usually on CPA. It's not the way we want to run, although I completely agree that especially if you're cross-selling between industries, it could be a fantastic move. We're evaluating it on a non-personal level. We're obviously analyzing different channels, and we're offering different offers. This is also something interesting in terms of diversification. We're offering different offerings to the same funnel at different times of day. Sometimes a certain funnel will get credit cards, sometimes they will get gambling, sometimes they will get a mobile app. Yes, but not on a personal level at this point.
Any other questions for Ory? Then in a final round of applause, thank you very much. You've covered
Thank you.
quite a lot of ground. And that moves us swiftly onto our SEO panel, which we'll bring up here right